It's almost that time of year, which means it's also time for just a bit of PrE3 predictions. I got myself an E3 report card off to the side, so I'll just go through it in order. Starting off is EA, which is a pretty big one. So big that I can't give a really universal overall mood of what I'm going to be thinking of it, because EA, as much as people point out all the terrible things they're constantly doing, I mean, they did literally have laws change with regards to gambling in games, so they definitely have that evil aspect going on, but they also did just publish A Way Out, which was a really cool game, and that's, I think, something that gets kind of brushed aside as the cool indie stuff they do put out. I don't have massive amounts of hype for EA conferences because they're never good. Like, and especially now, like, EA, a lot of the AAA aspect of EA is so far gone. Like, I just don't have the capacity to believe that Anthem will be any good. BioWare is basically dead, Mass Effect is buried, Dragon Age is, I don't know, who cares? I didn't mean that, I like Dragon Age. But I think the saving grace will be any of the cool, smaller stuff that they fund. Because there's some stuff that only they do. And it is kind of just... it's the one thing that makes EA worthwhile, I guess. Which is a shame. So, expectations, low, hopes, middling. I think there'll be at least one cool small thing, but I don't know that necessarily will mean that the conference will be worth it. I mean, it'd be amazing if they actually got things in gear and there was actually like a worthwhile new Mass Effect came out. Like, Andromeda released in a terrible state, but it was a good enough setup, I think, for a sequel. Like, they could go Mass Effect 2 with it and make it significantly better. I think there are rumors floating around of a Dragon Age game being made. So maybe that's what... maybe that'll be like a big thing to show off. I don't know if they have the capacity right now to make any of their big AAAs worth it. A big reason EA conferences aren't really anything to look forward to is because they have to focus so much on the sports aspect. They're going to probably have a car on the stage or something stupid, and they're going to have guys in business suits who are trying to sound like they care, but they just can't pull it off. So it's not one I'm going to look forward to watching, but I just hope there will be something of value there. Overall, I guess the report card has a little score for a hype meter, and I'd probably give it a pretty low one, like 3, I don't know, something pretty bad. Because even if there is some great stuff, like even if they, against the odds, show an amazing Mass Effect, and Anthem turns out great, and there's a Dragon Age and it's as good as Origins, and they have a bunch of cool indie stuff, it's just not going to be a good conference. So, Microsoft. This is the one that I just want them to do better. Microsoft's been in a weird spot for a while now. They've been just canceling games constantly. They've been delaying stuff that doesn't get cancelled endlessly. Their biggest release has been Sea of Thieves, which I haven't heard anyone talk about. Just that Microsoft needs to get it together. Because the thing is, I'm not that much into Xbox. I don't have an Xbox One. I got a 360 really late. It's just that the industry needs competition right now. Microsoft is just doing so bafflingly bad. There's so little on offer. They have this really great backward compatibility going on, and that's like the only thing they have to offer. It's just a shame, because if they were doing really well, that will be pushing Nintendo and Sony to do really well too. And that's important. I don't necessarily have to like the games they put out, even though I would really like it if they could make use of the IPs that they have, because they're just sitting on so much stuff now, it's actually getting absurd. But it's just more important that there be an even split. with the gaming community, because without the competition going for it, it's not good for Sony. I don't know what Nintendo's doing. They're their own thing, but it just would be really nice to get back to there being two giants in the industry, where right now it seems like they have one foot in, but they want to get out, but they don't want to admit it. So yeah, it ends up with this weird middling thing where they kind of are doing stuff and they're kind of not doing stuff. They kind of really hammer in that they have third-party games, but so does PlayStation, and they get a lot more stuff because they're the dominant one right now. So I'm really just hoping that they just have an amazing E3 this year, because if they drop out of the console market and they start going third-party or something, then that's not good for the industry. Someone else would have to jump in. Like they can't just be Sony and Nintendo because they don't compete enough. And maybe there'll be some other weird thing, like maybe there'll be a merge or something. But it's just, I don't know. I'm worried about Microsoft, which is weird to say. It's a company. I don't really think I should care. But their game studio is just such a mess right now. They canceled Scalebound. They canceled Dust. Phantom Dust? I can't remember. But they're delaying the Crackdown sequel. Like, it's just a mess. There's no other way to put it. It's just not in a good way right now. They just fumbled so hard at the beginning of the generation with the used game stuff they did and the Kinect requirement, and they just haven't been able to do anything right this generation. Besides backwards compatibility, which is great, and that's the thing, if they were more competitive, if they could really put pressure on Sony, then they'd probably have to do backwards compatibility too, and that would be nice. It'd make things better for everyone. And they don't. Now, they have said that there's going to be JRPGs at E3 this year. For some reason, that's the thing that they mentioned specifically. And I'm going to laugh if that ends up being just ports. Like, oh, we're going to have Final Fantasy 15 and Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy 7 Remake and stuff like that. Like, things that just aren't meaningful because they're just multi-platform things and they're just showing that Xbox has them, even though people don't really play that for them. But on the other hand, if it's actually something substantial, like maybe they'll remaster Tales of Vesperia, maybe we'll get the content that didn't really get over to the West. Maybe they'll fund some other big RPG. Maybe there'll be another Lost Odyssey type thing or something like that. Like, that could be really cool. But I don't know, because I don't think they have great relationships with a lot of Japanese devs too, because of what they did to Scalebound and other stuff like that. I don't know. I don't have much hype for Microsoft. I just have hopes for them because I really want them to succeed and push the companies I do care about to be better. And I guess maybe that's kind of weird, but that's just what I want out of them. And if they have some cool RPGs out of it, all the better. If they actually have some cool stuff I care about, I'll get an Xbox, because why wouldn't I? They just need to do something. Even if it's nothing I care about, I just want them to do better than what they have been. And not jump out of the console wars. Don't jump! Alright, so Bethesda is probably going to be a pretty short one. I'm just honestly not a big Bethesda fan. A lot of people are able to look past the severe bugs and such to get to the cool concepts behind their games, how open-ended they are and stuff like that. But I'm just not one of those people. Like, I've started so many Skyrim saves and had them ruined by some bug. And oftentimes not even bugs that are documented. So, it's just... I've never been a company I've been able to get behind. Even though I do really appreciate stuff like how they put out Doom, for example. Stuff like that. Cool things like that. Not necessarily my cup of tea, but, you know, for someone. And as far as I know, a lot more polished. Same with Wolfenstein. But in terms of my personal hopes, I mean, I'd like to see Skyrim ported more times than people believe is possible. That would be nice. And I don't know much. There's the Fallout game they revealed, but people don't seem very impressed by that. I just haven't heard great things about Fallout 4. And it honestly seems like Bethesda's overall quality has gone down from what I've heard. Like, everyone loves New Vegas when it comes to Fallout. And as far as they're concerned, a lot of times it seems that the new Fallout stuff is really nothing great. So I guess that's my take, is just other people's stances, because I personally haven't been able to really get into this kind of stuff. So yeah, I guess that's it. I just hope that Skyrim gets lots of ports and that other stuff that people do care about gets made. I don't have really any hype or expectations or hopes for them, really, because Bethesda is just not my thing. I'm sorry. So next up is Devolver, and they're kind of a weird case. Like last year, they didn't have a real conference. They had a really funny satire of what these conferences are. But Devolver is always fun to keep an eye on, not just because of that, but because they tend to make the really weird, not necessarily great games, but games that no one else would probably publish. And sometimes that leads to some really amazing stuff, and sometimes that leads to stuff that's at least cool to see, and that's worth it, I think. But, I mean, it's impossible really to give any good predictions, if you ask me. I don't really, like, Devolver, you don't really know, besides the fact that they're going to publish lots of games that end with an ER. That's like their one consistent trend. Otherwise, there's not much to go on. I'm sure there's some stuff that they have announced or something, and people are looking forward to that. I don't keep up track of Devolver that closely, but I mean, odds are whatever they show will be worth seeing, and odds are their conference will be worth seeing even if you don't care about a single one of their games. So they're kind of distinct in that way. Because Devolver is such a wild card, it's really tough to say anything about them, honestly. I think I have a pretty decently high hype level, maybe like a 7 or an 8 if I'm going to give it a number. But it's hype for things that I didn't know I wanted, not for anything I'm hoping that they announce. Because there's just so little to go on. Like, it's going to be something... My favorite thing to come out of it is going to be something that I'm not expecting, and something that's going to be weird. And that's Devolver for you. So, Square Enix is a bit of a surprise announcement, honestly, and it's a big deal for me. I definitely play a lot of Square Enix games. The thing is that they did do a conference not that long ago, a couple years ago, and then they stopped doing them. And honestly, the conference wasn't very good. So what I'm hoping that means is that they have something in mind. They have big guns to show, and that's why they're coming back to E3. So, despite myself, I do have pretty high hype. Like, if a 10 out of 10 hype is just the highest it can be relative to this year, then I guess Square Enix would get my 10 hype. And that's honestly not great, because I think I have high hopes and low expectations. Because Square Enix has a very high capacity to disappoint. They announce stuff way too soon. They delay things in a massive way, and then they release stuff like Final Fantasy 15, which is just doesn't inspire a huge amount of confidence. There's going to be stuff like Kingdom Hearts 3 is a given. They'll probably announce another world. Maybe they'll finally show Frozen or Star Wars or something like that. Besides that, there's no way we're getting out of that conference without there being several new Final Fantasy 15 announcements. They can't go more than a week without announcing something from Final Fantasy 15. What else? There's some Dragon Quest stuff. And I just haven't really followed Dragon Quest 11, I think it is. I don't have that much interest in Dragon Quest, honestly. I wouldn't be surprised, actually. This is something I don't see people really talking about, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have announced a Final Fantasy 13 remaster or collection or something like that. They released Final Fantasy 12 HD finally, and that means they're caught up, basically. I think Final Fantasy 7 Remake has an okay chance of being there. I don't think it's gonna be substantial. If it is, that'd be neat. I'd like it if we got some more worthwhile information out of that game finally, because it's just Square Enix again announcing things way too soon. Besides that, obviously there'll be some Rise of the Tomb Raider, or is it Rise of the Tomb Raider? I can't keep track of the Tomb Raider series, but I don't really care too much about that right now. It's not it's not high on my list of priorities. I'm imagining they'll finally show something of that Avengers project that they've been working on, the Marvel stuff that they've been signed on for multiple games, and there hasn't been much seen about that since. I feel like I heard somewhere that it's going to be multiplayer focused, which is a pretty big turnoff for me, but I don't know. Maybe it'll be something cool. I don't know. It's tough to say because especially I don't know how much of this is guesswork or not, but it seems like the Western and Eastern branches of Square Enix have severe communication problems. So I'm honestly just overall not super confident in any of their Western output right now. Not through any fault of their own, they're obviously very good devs. It's just, it seems like Square Enix is very internally focused right now. I'm wondering if Square Enix will end up showing any surprises, or if it'll mostly just be catching people up on stuff that they announced 40 or so years ago, and now they're finally going to give you a bit more of a taste. I guess that's ultimately the thing with Square Enix, is that they put out enough quality for people to still put up with their really bizarre scheduling. I guess there might be some more minor stuff, which ironically has been some of the better output for Square Enix lately. I would actually really love to see another proper World of Final Fantasy game. That ended up being a surprise hit back when it came out. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe there's some sort of new Bravely game, maybe some info about Dissidia, like a new DLC character or something. But honestly, I think the focus will probably be on stuff that's already announced. Tomb Raider, Kingdom Hearts. So basically Square Enix is getting by a lot just on my brand loyalty, how much I like Kingdom Hearts, and how much I still hope for something cool out of Final Fantasy. Final Fantasy VII Remake is a weird thing, but I think it could be good. It might not be as good as the original, or it might end up being actually kind of damaging to it, like how the sequels ended up being pretty bad. But unless they've completely reshuffled the team, which is not even, it's a much less than zero chance that that's happened. There are some people working on it that I just have a lot of confidence in. A lot of people who worked on games like Kingdom Hearts 2 or Kingdom Hearts Recoded, and obviously Tetsuya Nomura. I mean, he does good stuff. It's just as simple as that, really. But he might get taken off, and then they might. Well, I guess there's Hajime Tabata. I don't know. He has a new studio now. I don't know if it. Actually, that sounds dumb, doesn't it? I was gonna say it might be too early for them to show whatever he's working on, but that's never stopped Square Enix before. So there might actually be some hint at that, whatever he's going to do next now that he has his own studio. I guess that is my final, most vague prediction, is that Square Enix is going to announce something that's just their nature. They're going to tease something that's not going to have any substantial info for years. That's just a given from them at this point. Unless maybe them coming here is a sign that they're figuring things out and they're actually going to solve their issues that they have with their development cycles. And they have, Kingdom Hearts 3 didn't actually have a troubled development cycle. It just got announced way too early. It actually just came and went fine. And now it's going to come out this year, and maybe it'll be delayed till late next year. That's another thing. Kingdom Hearts 3 is going to get an announcement, a release date announcement. Probably sometime, if not at E3, then soon. But yeah, that's, I think, a pretty sure sign that they can put out a big AAA game and actually get it out on time. But I don't know. this seems like they have a lot of confidence, but the Final Fantasy 15 event they held for Final Fantasy 15's release announcement, that felt like they had a lot of confidence too. They brought in Hironobu Sakaguchi, the original creator of Final Fantasy. I think they had Nobuo Uematsu there. They had all sorts of big names, and that game didn't turn out to be anywhere near as good as the confidence they had in it. So I don't know, the confidence isn't necessarily a guarantee of quality. But like I said, I can't help but be hyped because they just make stuff I care about. So that's Square Enix, I guess. Next up is Ubisoft, and honestly they're kind of a strange one for me. I like a lot of what they put out, but they are kind of like EA in the sense that their smaller stuff is much more interesting. So there is that aspect, even though I'm a pretty big Assassin's Creed fan. I haven't gotten Origins, even though I hear it's pretty good, just not a priority right now. But besides that, like, Watch Dogs 2 was a pretty big improvement over the first Watch Dogs. I don't know if they're ever going to make another Rayman game. Rabbids seems to be doing fine. They had that Nintendo crossover. Just Dance obviously is never going to die. It's too powerful. And odds are they're going to finally show a bit more of Beyond Good and Evil 2, which is, I don't know, it doesn't look like what I think people wanted out of the sequel to that game. I never beat the original. I got about halfway, I'd say, and just for some reason dropped it. I mean, to pick it up ever since. But this looks beyond wildly different. It might as well be a separate game. And I'm wondering if it even is Ansel's vision for what he wanted it to be. But I don't know, it's probably just going to be some weird open world, maybe multiplayer thing? I don't know. But it's not really what I care about with Ubisoft. They're going back to Assassin's Creed being a yearly franchise again, and this one's going to be Greek. That was leaked by some merchandise. And that has a lot of potential for a lot of cool stuff. The setting always has been the star of Assassin's Creed games. They always put a ton of work into making it authentic, and Greek is just a really cool, popular one, so it's not a surprise to me at all they're finally tapping that, even if they did end up relegating China to a spin-off. I think some other Ubisoft stuff was leaked too, but I honestly can't remember it, and I'm not that worried about knowing what's going to happen when E3 is so soon. Something I would really like to see is more UbiArt stuff. They really pushed that engine for a while and had some cool, tiny games made with it. And that just kind of petered out, I guess. I'd like to see more of, like, that World War I game, for example. And, like, the Rayman games, stuff like that. It's got a really good system going for the art style. And it seems like it just isn't getting used anymore, which is a shame. But maybe this will be the year they bring it back. Maybe not. My excitement for the Ubisoft conference is pretty neutral, I'd have to say. For one thing, their conferences tend to be kind of cringy. So there's that aspect already going against it, I should say. But also just Ubisoft, a lot of stuff they put out is just good. It's not something incredibly exceptional, something that they don't release 10 out of 10s, they release 8 out of 10s. I think that's how someone put it once. And that's very true a lot of the time. So it's hard to go into the conference thinking, oh yeah, I'm going to be so excited, I'm going to see so much hype stuff. So I'm just going to give it a neutral 5 out of 10. So the PC conference is kind of a weird thing, both in terms of content and in terms of just what it is. Their conferences have always been kind of unique in how they're set up. They have a kind of cool, like, late night show vibe going on, which I find that they've been improving on gradually. So hopefully in terms of presentation it'll end up being really good this year. But as you may or may not know, PC isn't an actual company that puts out computer games. PC is just the general operating system, so it's not the same kind of conference you can go into where you can say, oh, there's going to be exciting new Sony games, or Nintendo games, or Xbox games, or anything like that. So it's kind of just an oddball. Even compared to something like Devolver, it's still something distinct. And I just hope that it's not incredibly boring. That was the problem every single time, was that it just went on so long and they focused on stuff that's like, it's stuff that PC gamers care about, like showing off a graphics card or something like that. The problem is it's just so dry and they took up so much time on it. So it ended up just not being something really worth watching. And in terms of what is actually going to be shown there, it's just going to be indie games most likely. Maybe there'll be some AAAs that are showing off how good they can run with the highest end systems. There'll be something like, look, you can have a really advanced hair physics if you get this new graphics card or something like that. So there's that aspect, but it's just, it's not worse, it's just very different from the standard, I guess. And I think that it ends up making it probably the least interesting conference. I hate to say that, because like, they did improve on it a lot with their second one last year. So it's not like there's no chance, or that, I don't know what to say really, because it takes a lot, I think, to make it into something more worthwhile, because they don't have the automatic advantages that the competition has. You don't have a new console to show off, or a new the PC has exclusives, but they didn't really focus on that, and it's never has been the biggest part with PC gaming. You don't go to PC because you want to see a Nathan Drake or a Mario or something like that. Like, even just when choosing a game to show while talking about the PC conference, I didn't really know what to actually bother showing, so that's why you're watching The Blob. So in a weird way, this is kind of an exception to a lot of what the E3 is all about, in that I'm actually kind of looking more forward to the conference itself. I'm hoping that they really work on the structure and make it into what it had the potential to be last year, and just make it overall less boring, have more interviews and interesting stuff like that. And that might just end up making it not necessarily the most valuable of the conferences, but certainly interesting, I guess. Something worth watching, even if you don't necessarily care about what they show. And I think that's the best they can go for. I don't know. I feel kind of mean saying all this, because it's just, I guess, too different maybe for what E3 is to a lot of people, but maybe not. I can't say I have any hopes or expectations besides I kind of expect it to be boring again, and I hope they prove me wrong. Hype level, I don't know. It could be anywhere, honestly, because it's such a wild card relative to a lot of other conferences. Like I said, even Devolver is more consistent in what to expect than the PC conference. This may come as a surprise to some people, but I think that Sony has a lot to prove this time. They've kind of gotten by on a lot of as far as I'm concerned, this generation, they won by doing absolutely nothing a lot of the time. Like, Microsoft just kind of blew it. And like I said in that one, I want them to really step up their game and push Sony. And Nintendo had their complete false start with the Wii U. So even though Sony had, I think, something of a strong start, they didn't have to try as hard, and now I feel like they're getting complacent. So I'm hoping that this changes my mind on that, honestly. I'm hoping for less Sony-isms, stuff like, I really hope that we're not getting every single Sony franchise rebooted into an over-the-shoulder, third-person, something or other action-type game. And I'm hoping that they're not gonna be lazy with this one, because they could, because they're really confident in what they have right now going on. And I'm worried that it's gonna be a really bad conference for Sony this year, because this just happens with every major company, but once they get lazy, things, or like once they have the big enough of a lead like this, like how Sony is so dominant this generation, they always fall apart. This happened when Microsoft was winning with the Xbox 360. It's what happened when Nintendo was winning with the Wii. They got overconfident and then they just completely flubbed it. And for a while it seemed like Sony wasn't doing that. It seemed like they were pushing their advantage. They announced, and with one E3 conference, they announced Shenmue 3, they announced Kingdom Hearts 3, they announced that, I think this is when they announced Final Fantasy 15 was actually going to be coming out. They announced all kinds of stuff. They announced The Last Guardian was finally coming out. They announced, like, it was just a whole bunch of stuff that people thought was never happening and they made it happen. But then it didn't happen. And that's kind of the problem that arose this generation, was that a lot of stuff ended up just being very long-winded, but Sony just had that extra little bit of an edge. Because they could say, our console is just like the last generation, and that could be a positive thing because we had stuff like Microsoft's used game stuff and things like that. So I'm hoping that they're not lazy with them, and if they're not, then this could be a really good conference. I'm hoping to get more stuff that gets me excited about my PlayStation, because it's been kind of slowing down as far as I'm concerned. And there are rumblings of a PlayStation 5, and if that happens, oh god, this generation has such a false start. Maybe there'll be NAC 3. That'd be nice. It wouldn't be nice. But anyways, they're probably going to eat up some of the stuff from other conferences. I'm sure there's going to be some crossover with most, like, I'm sure there's going to be EA stuff there. I'm sure there's going to be Ubisoft stuff there. Probably some Bethesda stuff, maybe. Definitely Square Enix stuff, because they're so closely entwined. I could see the Final Fantasy VII Remake stuff making it to Sony rather than Square Enix. They had a really classy presentation, which is another thing I actually really appreciate. I hope that they're playing music again. I think I've heard that the Sony Orchestra is a thing that's coming back, so that'd be nice. I guess the other trend that Sony has going is, despite their weird stance that no one wants to play ugly old games, they're still remastering PlayStation games a lot now. I mean, you can, like, if you count Final Fantasy VII Remake, there's also the, what's the skeleton game called? I can't remember. The one with the skeleton, though. You know what I'm talking about. And then, of course, there's Spyro Remastered coming out, even though it's technically not Sony. It's Sony. And besides that, there's, yeah, they've already done Crash, obviously. And I don't know, it just seemed kind of hypocritical, I guess. And maybe, I guess maybe one unlikely hope I'd like to see happen, I'd like to see them provide proper backwards compatibility, because Microsoft has been just destroying them in that regard. So I'd really appreciate if they backpedaled and stopped saying, oh, people don't even want to play these ugly old PlayStation 2 games, and please buy our remastered PlayStation 2 games for $20 or $10 or however much they cost. I mean, it is a bit more difficult for them. Emulating PlayStation 3 with their weird core system isn't easy. And, I mean, PlayStation 2 stuff is pretty old, so offering that is kind of less expected, but at the same time, Microsoft is letting you play most 360 games. They keep adding more and more every month, and they're letting you play original Xbox games now, too. And they also perform better, so the notion that you have to pay extra for better performing PlayStation 2 games on your PS4 is pretty... It's just doesn't look good, especially because I've been told there is actually a functioning PlayStation 2 emulator within a PS4 that just hasn't been activated. So that's a thing. That's another thing what I mean with Sony's overconfidence. Like, they could offer these things, but they don't because they have such a market lead. Like, they announced not that long ago that PlayStation Plus is going to stop offering Vita and PlayStation 3 games, and a lot of people said, well, that's obvious. But the thing is that it's a notable decrease in value, whether you use it or not. They're still offering something of value that is just being lost, and it didn't come alongside the announcement of a price reduction or anything. You're just still seemingly getting 2 PlayStation 4 games starting next year, which isn't something like that. That's just overconfidence. That's Sony's hubris is just waiting to bite them in the ass, I think. And I mean, I hope that my concerns aren't valid, honestly. I'd really like it for Sony to just really push forward, press their advantage, even though they don't have to. I'd like them to just show that they have more value than they already are offering. Especially because now Nintendo is catching up. They have the Switch, which is really successful right now, and it's getting Pokemon games and stuff, so it's going to be a guaranteed big deal. So Sony needs to start trying, and hopefully not before they lose their lead, because right now is the best time, I think, to keep what they have going. I guess in terms of hype, like a 6 or 7, just on the hope that they might be better. They might end up showing some really exciting stuff, because it's not like they can't. It's not like they don't have all kinds of great stuff going for them. It's just that when a company gets overconfident, they start to not have to do stuff like that to really make it worth buying to people, because everyone's already buying it. So that's my hope, I guess. Expectations are middling. Hopes are somewhat high, but I'm not feeling optimistic about this one. And I just really want to be wrong, honestly. I want them to have something exciting to it's not even like they're not going to have stuff exciting to show. It's just stuff like The Last of Us, I guess, is what they're going to be showing. And I don't know. So Nintendo is definitely a big one this year. This is a make or break year as far as I'm concerned with Nintendo, since they have to push the advantage they have. They went in strong for sure. They have Breath of the Wild and they have Mario Odyssey. And now they're coming in with a new Metroid, they got Smash Bros, they got a Pokemon game, they got a bunch of Pokemon games. So they've got a lot that'll get people excited, even if they don't show much else. But I think they need to do more than that, is the thing. A lot of people are pretty in on Nintendo just being back and winning right now. That's just kind of the stance, the accepted view of things. But me and a couple other friends have talked about how there are kind of signs showing that that might not necessarily be the case. They've definitely got the strong Switch stuff showing for it, but they've also got kind of some questionable stuff, like the new Kirby game was kind of weird, had surprisingly little content. And that there also just aren't a huge number of releases. There's this weird support they have going for the 3DS still, even though it's a lot of remakes and ports and stuff like that. I think Nintendo has a lot of potential for some surprises. I think there's going to be some surprises. There's going to be some stuff to get people excited, whether that'll be something people don't think is possible, like Mother 3 being localized, or if it's going to be more franchises coming back like Metroid did. Like maybe there'll be an F-Zero finally, or there'll be... there was that weird rumor about like a Star Fox game? I don't know. Maybe there'll be a proper 3D Kirby game. Maybe that was the one that came out was a holdover from the Wii U. There's just that kind of fear right now, because 1 year isn't enough to say that Nintendo is out of the bad habits they had during the Wii U. And they do have a new president now. They had a new president for a while too, with all that happened with Nintendo. So things are going to change, and it's hopefully there for the better. I think they've got pretty decent hype for Nintendo. I don't have a Switch, but I'm probably going to get one eventually, especially if this year ends up being a really good one for them. So I'd probably put my hype somewhere in the range of an 8 or a 9. I think Nintendo has a lot of potential to show some really cool, exciting stuff, and I think that the chances of it being a weak E3 for them is pretty slim, because I think they know that they have to prove that the Switch is here to stay too, because you know, one good year isn't enough for a console. It has to keep going. So hopefully they'll have some stuff to show. In terms of specific hopes, for one, I hope that Smash 5 is Smash 5, not Smash 4.5 or something to that effect. Because Smash 4 has some pretty notable problems, like especially in the content area, so I'm hoping that this one, at least, even if it ends up being significantly based on Smash 4, has better content. And I'm really hoping that they don't charge for the DLC again. I hope it's all included. Although it may be a new roster. They might not have everyone come back. Maybe you won't get to play as Cloud again. Maybe he'll be locked in the Wii U forever. Who knows? There's not that much info about it, so it's hard to say. You can just say what you hope for, I guess. I'm just looking at Bayonetta right now, and yeah, Bayonetta 3 is coming along, so that's something to go look forward to. There's no way that's going to be bad, so like people argue that Bayonetta 1 is one of the best Spectral fighters ever, and then people argue that Bayonetta 2 is somehow even better, even if some people disagree. So 3 doesn't have it, like even if it's worse than both of them, that's probably better than most games by what I know of it. Besides that, they do need to push third-party support a bit, I guess. Like, that's the big problem the Switch has going for it, is that it is significantly weaker than the competition, especially if other companies end up bringing out new systems beyond their 4.5 versions, like the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X and stuff like that. And that it makes the porting kind of hard, but the Switch is hot right now, so people want to do it. And Nintendo just needs to keep the Switch hot. Which is why I'm hoping that they have a lot of, not necessarily a lot of stuff, but a lot of things that will get people excited beyond the standards. Like, they already got Zelda and Mario out of the way, so they can't really rely on their biggest guns right now. There might be some, like a smaller Zelda, and maybe like a Mario spin-off of some sort, but they can't have a new big Zelda right away because they just did that. They can't have a new big Mario right away because they just did that. So hopefully they'll fall back on smaller stuff like Metroid. Maybe Punch-Out will come back, who knows. Something I'd personally like to see is some level of confirmation that their online services aren't going to really suck. I don't just mean in the sense of the paid stuff where you have to pay for Smash Bros. Online and stuff like that, but just show the Virtual Console, please. Maybe, if we're really lucky, show GameCube Virtual Console, but just the fact that that's been such a mess ever since the Wii, which was really good, is a really sad aspect of how things are with Nintendo. Do they really need to restart their service again, or streamline it, or whatever they said they're going to do? And that's just the thing, Nintendo is so weird. So it's like, whenever you think they're going to do something great, they completely fumble. And whenever you think that they're down for the count, that's when they release something really cool and exciting. And then they just kind of do their own thing, so it's tough to say that you want something from them, because they might show you something that's better than what you wanted. But also at the same time, they might do something that's the opposite. They might release a Paper Mario Sticker Star when you want a regular Paper Mario. They might release a Metroid Federation Force when you want Prime 4. But then they'll come along and they'll actually do Prime 4. If they announce a real Paper Mario game, finally, after all this time, that would win me over instantly. That, as far as I'm concerned, is enough proof that they're finally back on the right track after stumbling ever since the late Wii period, and then going really hard on the Wii U, and then the Wii Switch is like, it's not all there. It's got some really good stuff, but it needs more than just a few amazing games, because those only appeal to certain people. It needs more to, it needs to broaden its horizons, I guess is the word for it. And they might not need to do that right now is the thing. And Nintendo is unique in that they have Nintendo Directs all the time. They don't necessarily need E3 to show off all their biggest, best stuff, even though it is a smart idea to do so. So even if it ends up not showing, like, even if they focus heavily on just Pokemon and Metroid and Smash Bros. And don't really do much new, that doesn't necessarily mean that there won't be new stuff in even like a month or two or something like that. Nintendo is so set on doing their own thing, and that's the best thing about them and the worst thing about them. So while I have pretty high hopes for them this time, I've had high hopes for Nintendo before and been disappointed. So who really can say? It's Nintendo. Like, there's some confirmed stuff that I'd like to see more of. The World Ends With You solo, or not, the World Ends With You final remix, Octopath Traveler. That's all Square Enix stuff, though. That might just be there. I guess just on a very fundamental, broad level, what I'd like to see is some stuff that is GameCube era weird for Nintendo. Because, like, Mario Tennis Aces is weird to look at that as a standard, but after being really boring on the Wii U, I mean, and not having there wasn't even anything on the Wii for Mario Tennis, it's taken a shift back to the really over-the-top, weird, hardcore that some of the Mario sports games had, which Nintendo kind of was trying to get rid of for a while with their spin-offs and stuff. They wanted to really homogenize Mario, and now they're kind of letting it loose again with things like Mario Cross Rabbids and stuff, and getting weird with it. And that's what I want. I want weird GameCube stuff for Nintendo, because that was a really great gen, even if it didn't sell amazingly well. And now that they have momentum, they could have really cool, exciting games alongside a wide audience. Ultimately, what I'm taking out of this is that because they have Smash Bros. And because they have Pokemon, they're going to end up having a lot of excited people this year. But what else they do is what's going to determine their future, as far as I'm concerned. The test, the thing that proves that they're willing to do stuff that makes Nintendo really great. And if it isn't that, then it might be a sign that they're gonna start getting boring again, and that would be a big shame. Because Nintendo really does seem like they're getting back into their groove, and I want that to be the case. Alright, well that's the first half of my E3 report card. Now E3 just has to happen. Then we'll see if my hopes and dreams can come true.